Hello and welcome back to the CBJ show. I'm Brandon. Alongside me is Jason. Fortunately, Cam's not here, but that ain't stopping us from broadcasting and telling you, our viewers, our thoughts on the hottest topics in sports this week. Um, we are going to add a little bit of a new style, new activity for this podcast. If you're a longtime listener since the beginning, you know debates hasn't really been something we've been doing a lot lately, but we've been tackling and trying to improve our podcast, and that's been something we've gotten as a feedback. So today we've got some great topics in the NBA and NFL with point guards and NFL players and rookies and stuff. So lots to look forward to. And we got some new social platforms that if you haven't followed already, we'll touch upon at the end of the episode, where you can tell your comments here on YouTube at The CBJ Show. This is the new platform. Or on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and so on and so forth. With that, we're just going to dive into our first part of the show, which is our NFL fantasy football preview. We know fantasy football, the regular season starts on September 9th with the Cowboys at the Bucks. But from now until then, a lot of people like to do fantasy football. So if you haven't already done a draft and you're looking for ideas on who to draft and what players are available and stuff at different positions, you're in the right spot. Jason and I are going to go through each category, talk about our top 10 or 15 players in that category, who we think is worth getting, and who we think is not worth getting as a starter. This is meant for an 8 to 10 person league where you have one QB, two running back, two wide receiver, a flex, a tight end, a defense, and a kicker. With that, I'll hand it off to Jason, who will give more information and dive into the QB section.
For the QBs, this year, there's a lot of great options, in my opinion, that you can go with. There's the obvious players like a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Russell Wilson. I mean, there's also some sleeper guys that you got to look out for. I think someone like Kyler Murray could finish as this year's QB1 in all of fantasy. A lot of people are saying that, but some people aren't really catching on to that. Trust me, I think Kyler Murray is going to be a really good player this year, and he's going to be fantastic in fantasy. He can run the ball. He has more options at receiver now, as AJ Green has signed a contract there. And they still, of course, have D-Hop, a top two receiver in the league, arguably number one. And I think Kyler Murray is a guy you can look at to finish as the top quarterback in all of fantasy football. I mean, yes, you might want to take a safe pick and take Mahomes or Josh Allen, Lamar, but I think Kyler Murray would be a nice pick to get there. And also Aaron Rodgers, you can always rely on him. He's the MVP last year, and you can depend on him to not throw interceptions. But also there's some guys that are a little bit further down, that if you want to just stack up on running backs and receivers early in the draft and you still think you need a quarterback but not like a star quarterback, there's some guys down there you can stack in the last few rounds of your draft. One guy I really like there is Jalen Hurts, because he can both run and pass the ball at a very high level. They're going to be running the offense through him. This is his offense. The receivers are getting, it's a little bit better. Get Devontae Smith on that roster now. Jalen Reagor looks fantastic in training camp. I don't know if anyone has seen his catches and his athleticism. It's just crazy. And I think Hurts is a guy that you can depend on. Yes, he's probably around the 15, 16, 17 range when you rank fantasy quarterbacks at this moment in time. But don't be surprised if he has some really good weeks where he gets over 20 points, like a PPR league. So that would be someone who I'd look out for. But there's a lot of options you can look at for sleepers. It just depends on if you want to take the risk or you want to play it safe.
Just like Jason touched upon, I'm going to add a little bit more of the QB. So I think the number one QB is Patrick Mahomes, but top three is definitely a great pick if you have Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen. And like Jason mentioned, Kyle Murray, I think he'll be atop of fantasy list, and he's going to be one of the best QBs this year. we also have those um, old names, familiar names, and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford. But I think a name that jumps out to me on this list that I'm surprised or is Justin Herbert. On He is going to be very good. He obviously had a great year last year, um, and he led the Chargers to a few more wins than they had. Unfortunately, did not make the playoffs last year, but um, Justin Herbert is a guy that you may be surprised about for fantasy, thinking Chargers don't have a lot of options as weapons for wide receiver, and they lost tight end Hunter Henry to the New England Patriots. But I think Justin Herbert is a solid choice for QB. If you're looking at other options and there's Rodgers, Wilson, Prescott, Brady left, I think Justin Herbert's a great backup option. And you never know if someone gets hurt. We've had so many injuries in the NFL over the years, and just the last couple of years, you never know if someone's going to get hurt. And having a backup QB like Justin Herbert isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, I think Justin Herbert is going to have a fantastic year, not only just in fantasy, but as an overall player. I expect him to solidify himself as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL by the end of the season, if he isn't already. Because, I mean, with his rookie year, he was the offensive rookie of the year last year. He was great. He's got some weapons back. Austin Eckler is a great pass catching running back. Who can run the ball and pass the ball. So if Herbert needs to pass a check down, he's got Eckler there. Keenan Allen's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, probably top 10 in my opinion. That's debatable. You still have Mike Williams. I think Jalen Guyton's a breakout player for their third wide receiver spot in LA. And also that new and improved offensive line in LA is very, very good. It's one of the best offensive lines in the league. They got arguably the best center in the league in Corey Linsley, and they made a great draft pick early in the draft this year in the first round. And I think Justin Herbert is set up for success. And he could definitely be your starting quarterback. But if you think you can snag him later, he can be your backup. Like Brandon said, that's not a bad option. But I really think Justin Herbert's someone you can depend on to be your number one quarterback in every week as long as he can stay healthy.
All right, moving on to our running backs category. Running backs, most people play with a minimum of two. Sometimes you play three if you're putting them in your flex. Uh, there's lots of great running backs. These are only a selective few, but there's a lot of great options. And if you're doing an 8 to 10 person league, there's still great options. Obviously, I think Christian McCaffrey is going to go number one in running backs, but also probably number one in your draft. It's typical for a fantasy football draft to have a running back or wide receiver be one of the first couple picks. And McCaffrey is awesome when he is healthy. Obviously, last year he was unhealthy, and that caused him to not play as well and not get as much fantasy points for any fantasy holders. But Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, he can run a lot. And Carolina have got Teddy Bridgewater as their new QB, and I
Sam
think
Darnold, actually.
Sam Darnold actually, sorry, as their new QB, and they got Robbie Anderson as a new wide receiver. But if you ever need to go with the ground game, you got a great guy in McCaffrey. I had this guy last year, and I think he's one of the top running backs in Dalvin Cook. Cook just runs for yards against teams. A lot of teams don't know much how to defend him and take him down. He's a big guy and he just kind of just plows through, and it seems like every time he gets the ball, he's just running for at least 5 yards. So Cook is a great option. Kamara, we saw throughout the year from his 6 game touchdown on Christmas to his all the runs he did last season. He did awesome. Uh, Aaron Jones. So Green Bay situation they is difficult with Rodgers, with him not. Who knows if he's on his A game or not? So picking Aaron Jones, a running back one, is not a bad option as you don't know how much Rodgers is going to throw, and even if he does, Adams or Aaron Jones is also an option for a little pass catch from Rodgers. Moving down the list, we got Barkley, coming back from his injury. If you want to take the risk of him coming after what he did coming back, it's the same with Dak Prescott. It's a little hard, unpredictable to predict if he's gonna be a good player, but Saquon Barkley is definitely a running back one in my books. Uh, Obviously, Ezekiel Elliott is great. Austin Eckler, I think a lot of people put him farther down the list than he should be. He was great for the Chargers. Like we mentioned, Herbert has those weapons, but with Herbert at QB and Eckler at running back, it's a scary Los Angeles Chargers team that we didn't really get to see last year with all the injuries and stuff that happened. Um, my guess is I'd pick a sleeper for a running back second would be Joe Mixon. He picks up a lot of ground game and good. This is a question of what's happening, what he was before he got injured. Is it going to be, are they going to rely on him a lot? Uh, I would pick Joe Mixon up for your starter because you never know if he's going to get a lot of yards.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Joe Mixon. I mean, his game is very volume dependent because this year Joe Burrow has a lot of receivers to throw to. Now he has Jamar Chase and alongside Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, who I think is a really good receiving core. So I think someone like Joe Mixon is going to be volume dependent. There's going to be some days where he doesn't get that many touches, or if he has like an off game, they're going to try to throw the ball a lot. And also, there's going to be those days where they just feed him. He's a workhorse in the backfield and he gets like 20, 25 carries. Those are the days that you want Joe Mixon. I can tell you that's going to happen at a lot of points this year. But going back to what you said about guys coming off injuries, I'd still be willing to take the risk of taking them because a lot of those guys are still very young. Like Christian McCaffrey just turned like 25 a few months ago. And we know how great he is. In the 3 games he played last year, he still would have been he was the RB1 every single week in fantasy, no matter what. He had like a 37-point game and after like a 7-week break. Like that just shows you how good someone like Christian McCaffrey can be coming off an injury, and he's still young. Same thing with like Saquon. Yes, Saquon had a rough start to last year because they can't really get an offensive line going in New York. They're going to try to improve that, of course. I like Andrew Thomas to hopefully improve this year. He was the top draft pick a few years ago. Or last year, not too great, but I think he can improve. I still think you can take the risk on guys coming out the injury. But I also want to talk about some underrated players that I'm looking at. I like someone like Antonio Gibson to be your RB1 because he's going to get the volume he needs. Washington, they're gonna run heavy. We know that for sure. With J.D. McKissick, they like passing to him. They have a lot of other good running backs. They ran Peyton Barber a few times last year, and I think Antonio Gibson could get involved very quickly. And also a rookie, nobody's talking about him being an RB1. I think he can be. Najee Harris, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think you can depend on him. Yes, he's not a first round pick, but if you get in the second round, I think that is going to be very, very big. So my biggest advice would probably be try to stack up on your running backs early because there's only like 15 or so running backs you can depend on to give you 15 plus a week. That's what I'll say. You can get your wide receiver ones in the 3rd and 4th round. There's only a few of them, but if you play your cards right, you should get 2 RB1s and hopefully a wide receiver 1 and a high end wide receiver 2 with low end wide receiver 1 upside. So that's how I would play it personally. So just stack up on your running backs.
All right, and the wide receivers, like Jason mentioned, you want your running backs first and then wide receivers. Just it's why we put our categories with running back before wide receiver, but it's also if you do in order, it goes QB, running back, wide receiver. The number one on this list is Green Bay Packers wide receiver Davante Adams. He is just awesome, and if Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, he plays in Aaron Rodgers' prime, not doesn't want to play. I think Adams is going to get a lot of receiving yards, and he is probably the number one wide receiver you would want to draft. Other top wide receivers are Tyreek Hill in Kansas City, Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, and DK Metcalf in Seattle. All 4 of those teams have great QBs. Green Bay has Rodgers, KC has Mahomes, Buffalo has Allen, and Seattle has DK Metcalf. The only thing that I would point out of these 4, and actually, sorry, I want to add number 5, D-Hop, because he is unbelievable after he caught that Hail Murray. Kyle Murray is a great QB. The only thing with these five is Stiggs. And the reason why I bring this up is the NFL vaccination status is has been definitely a topic that is debatable. We're not going to really go in, but right now, Josh Allen is unvaccinated, and that could lead to him not playing games, or if he gets COVID or any other reason why he's outside the team. And that could result in Diggs not getting as much. I'm not saying that's a reason why you should not get Diggs, but it is one risk factor you have to take with Diggs, as you never know what could happen. No one knew that Cam Newton was going to get COVID at the beginning before the season started, but after week 3 he did. Anything can happen. A lot of good names on this list with Mike Evans in Tampa, Chris Godwin in Tampa, Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, Julio Jones in Tennessee. And A.J. Brown in Tennessee. My steal in this is going to be with the Chargers again. If you've been catching a theme, we like to ride in the Justin Herbert train. I think Herbert will be the solution in LA. And I'm going with Keenan Allen. He's a lot of people think he's underrated. And it's because he doesn't get that many passes, but that was also because his QB wasn't the best. Yes, Philip Rivers, you can say, is a good player, but he's not a player like Rodgers, Mahomes, or Brady. And I think Herbert is going to be the next kind of young star, one of the best young stars, and probably definitely one of the best in the last 2020 NFL class. And Keenan Allen knows how he can catch a lot of stuff and get you a lot of fantasy points. So if you're looking for a wide receiver sleeper late in the rounds, Keenan Allen may be your best opportunity.
I agree with that. I think Keenan Allen is a very good person to target in probably the third or fourth round of your draft, depending on how many people are in it and if people draft smartly. I like Keenan Allen. I think it's just his thing is just he needs to get good volume because now that Eckler's back, you can't guarantee he's getting a lot of catches because Eckler's going to take carries and catches away from him. And also Mike Williams, I think, is someone who could break out this year. But I think Keenan Allen is definitely a solidified wide receiver one on any fantasy team, no matter what. Even if Eckler's getting those carries, he's such a great contested catcher. He has long arms. He can catch over anyone. And you definitely would want to draft him in the third or fourth round. Probably the late third round is a great spot to add Keenan Allen. But my sleeper pick is someone who I think can finish top 5 in fantasy wide receivers, possibly even higher than 5. And that is Atlanta Falcons receiver Calvin Ridley. And that's because the team has absolutely no other weapons than Calvin Ridley. At running back, they've been transitioning from a lot of guys who went from Devontae Freeman a few years ago, then Todd Gurley, who disappointed. They lost Ito Smith this offseason, who split carries with Gurley last year. They signed Mike Davis, who I like Mike Davis, but he's not the solution at running back. And that receiver, Julio, is out of there. Wide receiver room is empty. And you know who wide receiver one is in Atlanta? It is Calvin Ridley. He's going to take over. You saw his stats last year. Well, now he's the number one option for the entire season. Yes, there's Russell Gage and some other guys there, and Hayden Hurst is a solid tight end. But Calvin Ridley with Matt Ryan, they're going to be a great connection. They won't win many games as a team, but Calvin Ridley can get your fantasy team some wins. So Calvin Ridley is someone who I would love to get in the third round of my drafts if I could get him. And also another guy that people should not really be sleeping on right now, I'd probably say A.J. Brown. You can draft him pretty high, I think, because A.J. Brown's going to get a lot more targets than Julio, in my opinion. Yes, Julio is more skilled, but A.J. Brown is going to be a lot more he's got a lot more volume in that heavy Tennessee offense. Tannehill, who's been so underrated, and he's taking that step forward with Tennessee after a few bad years in Miami. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and I think A.J. Brown is a guy that can break out as a fantasy player and then probably be close to that top 5 area. So I would look to draft A.J. Brown in the 4th round or maybe even earlier than that, because he is a wide receiver 1 in fantasy without a doubt in my mind.
One name that has sparked my attention that we haven't named yet, and you may be wondering, why have we not talked about that? And it's Michael Thomas. And that's for a lot of reasons. One, the QB situation is different. Drew Brees is gone with retirement, and it's been reported that Jameis Winston is a starter. Second factor is that Michael Thomas right now is injured still. He had an injury last year that sidelined him for a lot of the regular season, and we saw him in the playoff game against the Bucks. He wasn't his best self due to the injury. So those two factors haven't the reason why we haven't really mentioned him. And if you want to take the risk with Michael Thomas, just know he may not play every week, and he may not get as many catches as other players that we've mentioned. Moving on to our tight end list, the big name that jumps out here, there's actually a decent amount of tight ends that you can get as tight end one, but it's not many. I would say it's a list of 5 people. It's Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs, Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers, Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens, and Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. The first 4 I'll touch upon first, and then we'll jump into Pitts. So Kelce, he's a monster for KC. Another big option, just like Hill and for Patrick Mahomes. He gets a lot of receiving yards. If you have a later pick in a 10-team league, 7, 8, 9, Kelce may be an person you might want to take in the first round since he is the best tight end. And if you do pass on him, other people will take the opportunity. The other thing is the other 2, Waller, Kittle, and Andrews, all great, solid players, will get you tons of fantasy points, and when your opponents will be very jealous when you play them, when you're stacking up lots of points in fantasy. Lastly, Kyle Pitts. As a rookie, it's hard to know what he's going to do, but going into the 2021 draft, we knew he was the best tight end in the draft, and he was picked and the number 4 picked by the Atlanta Falcons. And so we know that he's a contender for tight end, and I would say is probably one of the top tight ends in the league. I would say my sleeper pick in this, if you don't get those 5, I would go with, it's a tough pick, but I'm going to go Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. And that's because last year, he actually was one of the biggest targets for Tua Tagovailoa. I think I'm saying that right, in Miami. He is a big guy, and it's hard to take him down. Same thing with Jonnu Smith in New England. He's tall, he's hard to take down. But why I'm going with Gesicki is he can get you a lot of fantasy catches and a lot of yards, and that's what you need. So points by scoring touchdowns, points by getting yards. He is a option that if you can't get the top 5, he is someone that I would pick.
I do like Mike Gesicki. I thought my expectations for him were a lot higher than what they were than his performance last year. I thought he would have broken out to be a top 5 tight end last year, and it just didn't happen. If you watch the games, he is incredible with his hands. He has some rare athleticism for a tight end. You can see him jump up for those contested catches. But I'm just not a big fan of him for fantasy. I mean, if he's one of the top 10 tight ends to get drafted in your fantasy league and he's around like the 7, 8, 9 range, that's a really good place to get Mike Gesicki. But I wouldn't target him over a lot of other guys. I think there's still some other options out there that I would personally take over him. One other guy that we haven't really talked about, who I think is a mid-range tight end one, who could possibly be a top 3 fantasy tight end by the end of the year, because kind of like Calvin Ridley, yes, now they have Kyle Pitts now in that receiving core, but this guy absolutely has no competition with receivers, and that's TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. The receivers are Quentin Cephas, Tyrell Williams, and Brashad Perriman. And I'm sure a lot of people haven't even heard of those names like ever. So TJ Hawkinson has a great opportunity with a new quarterback this year to form that new chemistry with Jared Goff, and he's got some great volume. I think he can get over 10 catches like every single game, over 100 yards. The only thing that's in their way is maybe DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams in that backfield, because I think that's going to be a good backfield. DeAndre Swift's one of my breakout candidates for that running back position. But TJ Hawkinson's got that entire receiving core to himself. I think he's going to take advantage. I think he'll be a tight end one from the start. And we saw him on the top 100 NFL list this year, and that's a good reason why.
All right, moving on to kickers. At the end of the draft, you want to draft a kicker and defense. I would not. I would recommend if you have a 10-team league. I think there's about 13 rounds. Should try to take your kicker and defense towards 11, 12, and 13. And I say that because um, there's decent amount of kickers in defense, and there's more of a chance you would miss out on a great running back, wide receiver, tight end by getting a kicker too early. Uh, there are of the list, I think everyone on this list is a great pick. But my sleeper pick on this is going to be Tyler Bass of the Buffalo Bills. And I'm picking him because Josh Allen in the Bills offense have a lot of scoring. I think I'm predicting a lot of scoring for the Bills. And that's because Josh Allen can throw about 400 yards a game. We saw him last year. He almost took his team to the Super Bowl. It was about um, one game short against the Kansas City Chiefs. But if the Bills scoring a lot, Tyler Bass is needed for a lot of field points. In addition, sometimes team field goal because even the with Brady and Rodgers and all those new young guys, sometimes you have to take a uh, field goal. And has a great leg and can kick really far. And he, being Buffalo, has difficulty with winds and stuff with weather. He's used to that. And that's something that a team that plays indoors all season has a hard time with because of the wind and stuff. So he knows how to face all the elements.
I agree with that sleeper pick. Tyler Bass, I've already drafted him in one of my leagues, and I think he's going to be great. He was a rookie last year. He came in right away and did his thing. Like you said, that Bills offense is gonna score a lot of points as long as Josh Allen can stay healthy. He has a lot of receiving weapons. You have Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and the list goes on and on. They're signing guys today. I just saw. So as long as everyone can stay healthy, and they also have Devin Singletary, Zach Moss in that backfield, and Dawson Knox at tight end. I like that Bills team a lot. And Tyler Bass can be kicking those extra points. They're gonna be in field goal range like all the time. That team is not gonna end up punting. I don't think too much as long as they can stay healthy. So I'm a big fan of Tyler Bass, and I like that pick.
All right, with that, we're going to move on to defense. And defense is a hard pick, and that's because in majority of fantasy leagues, you pick the whole defense. So I remember once doing a draft with some people that had never really done it, and they last year Chase Young was an awesome player for the Washington football team, and someone said, "Can I draft Chase Young?" And it doesn't really work that way. You draft the whole team. You could have a few good players, but the rest could be bad. But it's a challenge a decision you make when you pick your team, and actually that kind of just leads into what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna pick the Washington football team as my number one defense, and that's because they showed it last year, especially against great teams like Seattle, um, and San Francisco, LA Rams. The NFC West was great. Hard division, score a lot of points. We saw the Washington football team uh, step up and make those big plays, led by number 99, Chase Young. And I think they're going to continue that. That was one of the reasons why they won the division. It's the worst division in football, but their defense carried them in. So you had a great defense with a little bit of magic from Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think the Washington football team will win that division. That's a preview for something we'll talk about later, but I think the Washington football team is a great defense team that you should pick.
Washington football team has, in my opinion, probably the best defensive line in the NFL. So yeah, you gotta take them at some point. If you can snag them with one of the first defenses to go off the board, that would be great. But one team I'm looking at as a very sleeper pick, and it's not really anyone who you think of at the beginning, but it's actually the Denver Broncos. That might sound a little strange, but they have a lot of weapons in that linebacking court. Their secondary is one of the best in the NFL right now. Yes, their schedule is going to kind of screw them over a bit. because I mean they're not really in a position where they can win a lot of divisional games. They face the Chargers twice, they face the Raiders twice, and of course the Chiefs twice. And at most, I think they're winning 2 games out of those 6, probably just like one. And then they're playing some other difficult games. So yes, it's gonna be hard, but they're gonna rack up a lot of interceptions and sacks. I'm telling you that secondary is great. Ronald Darby, Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, Kyle Fuller, and also Von Miller is returning to that linebacking core along with Bradley Chubb. That's a great group. And also this also includes special teams. Remember that. So that's something to keep in mind when you're taking defenses/special teams.
All right, that will wrap up for our talk about fantasy football. And obviously, there's ESPN has so much websites and stuff. You can literally search on Safari. It's the beauty of technology we have of how you can draft. One of the things we learned at Play-by-Play Sports Broadcasting Camp from the great Matthew Berry was all about how to draft a good team, and you got to find the right balance of good players and some sleeper picks. So sometimes you may draft someone that your friend next to you may say, "Oh, that's a stupid pick," but you never know if injuries and other things that could happen. And a team like the Lions and TJ Hawkinson, a lot of people think, "Oh, that's not a good pick," but you never know if a lot of bad wide receivers and a good QB and Jared Goff, you never know if he could be the next sleeper pick that everyone wished they had drafted. So that's what I would say about that, and that will wrap it up for our NFL fantasy football discussion. Welcome back, and now it's time for CBJ in your face. So, first topic we got is who is a better point guard in the NBA? Corey and Jason, he had a hot take a few weeks ago saying that Luka Doncic is a better point guard than Damian Lillard. So, with that, got a few minutes. Take your way, Jason.
Okay, so I personally don't think this is a hot take. I think this is just facts. Like, everybody should be saying this right now. And if you're not saying this, I kind of think you're a bit crazy. Luka Doncic is by far the better player than Damian Lillard. And you don't even need the stats to show it. I mean, the stats, of course, show it. But just watch the games. You see Luka dominate in every single way. There's very few things that Damian Lillard does better than Luka. The only things that I gave Damian Lillard the edge on is shooting at an efficient rate. But Luka has improved on that as we saw at the end of the season and in the playoffs. And also probably just 3-point ability as a whole. Three-pointer is probably dominated by Damian Lillard. But I'd say probably everything else everything else that you need in a complete player, Luka Doncic is better at than Damian Lillard. He's a better volume scorer, as Damian Lillard is a better pure scorer. Luka is a better volume scorer. He will drop more points when he wants to, when he can. He also gets the team involved. He carries his team. Damian Lillard has CJ McCollum as a second option, who averaged 23.5 points almost last year. He also had Jusuf Nurkic, Enes Kanter, Robert Covington. Norman Powell was almost a 20-point scorer last year. And Luka, he had Kristaps Porzingis, who absolutely fell apart in the playoffs last year. And Tim Hardaway Jr. is not a second option on a playoff team. I'm sorry to say it, but he is not. So Luka Doncic absolutely carried that Mavericks team. He almost took down Kawhi Leonard and Paul George by himself. And if you look at those playoff stats, I mean, yes, I don't like to use stats to back up my arguments. I know we say arguments come from the heart, not the stats. 36, 8, and 10 in the playoffs on 49-41 shooting field and 3-point percentage. And also, he's a better defender than Damian Lillard, and that's not a debate. Yes, Luka is not a good defender, but he's an average defender. Damian Lillard is a defensive liability. He is a subpar defender, and Luka, you can rely on him to get stuff. He's strong. He's got a good frame. Having a bit of a height advantage might give him the advantage in like any debate. But I love Luka Doncic, and he is by far better than Damian Lillard.
All right, so I like your points about saying he has a better field goal percentage. Luka has a better field goal percentage than Lillard. His rebounds are better. And you say that his defense is better, but I'm actually going to have to disagree. And of the games I've seen, Lillard is like always on the ball. He scores so many points. He's a leading scorer in Portland. yes, he has McCollum, but it also helps him. He gets some assists to McCollum, who then shoots it, and that's why Portland is sometimes one of the dangerous teams because they have another player that can help uh, Damian Lillard. Unfortunately, in Dallas, Luka is a one-man show and sometimes can't do everything on himself. And you see, sometimes he forced shots that go in. Luckily, especially that one against the Boston Celtics this past year in Dallas. But Damian Lillard knows how to shoot threes anywhere on basically on the court. If it's a layup, if it's a pull-up shot, if it's a three, if it's a half court, he can shoot anywhere, just like Luka. But Damian Lillard has uh, better shooting, and he has a better free throw percentage, which means you're getting more consistent with Damian Lillard than Luka Doncic.
Well, we bring up free throw percentage. I mean, at first, I think free throw percentage is a little bit overrated when we look at the stats. I mean, Damian Lillard is one of the most pure shooters and scorers in the game. So, of course, you expect him to eclipse 90% from the free throw line. But just because Luka Doncic is a little subpar for point guard free throw shooting, that doesn't really take away from what else he does. Because when you say that Damian Lillard is great at setting up his team, well, Luka Doncic is by far the better passer than Damian Lillard as well. You see him, he goes behind the back, he goes over his head, he knows where his teammates are, he knows where to find them anywhere on the court. He will find them. And also, he stacks up on the rebounds too. He will get triple doubles. I mean, obviously, you shouldn't be going for stat padding. That's not what he does. Luka plays to win. He doesn't play the stat pad. But when you see him put up those 40-point triple doubles in the playoffs, oh my God, his stats are just crazy. I just don't know how Damian Lillard does anything better except for just shooting and pure scoring than Luka. Luka does everything better: rebounding, passing, being a leader, and also defense. And he's gonna be dominating the league next 2 years. I think a lot of people will be saying Luka Doncic is the best player on the planet.
Yes, but if he's a better performance player, then how can Luka be better than Damian Lillard? If you, I think that looking at the stats saying that the Dallas Mavericks were 2-4 without Luka, while the Portland Trailblazers were 3-2 without Lillard, shows that Lillard is yes, that shows a little bit less for Lillard, but it shows that he's not always the one man show. He has McCollum to help. In the games that he wasn't able to play, McCollum was able to step up. Unfortunately, in Dallas, Luka's the only man, and he's a one man show. And when he doesn't play, uh, there's no big star to fill his shoe on that Dallas Mavericks team.
Well, I mean, that's not really Luka's fault. I mean, he was kind of put into the situation of where he has to be the one who runs the offense. He has to run the show. And Lillard, he's luckily that McCollum got drafted the year after him, and they became one of the best backcourts in the league. But Luka does not have another option, yet he carries his team a lot easier. Damian Lillard does not carry his team like that hard. And also another
Yes, but
argument,
Damian Lillard does carry the team with help of McCollum. If Luka
Luka
can't
carries
do
the
it
team by
himself,
himself because he
he
has
has
nobody
nowhere
else.
to go, basically.
What if Luka was on the Trailblazers and Dame was on the Mavericks? I think the Trailblazers would easily be in the better position. They would have beaten the Denver Nuggets in that series easily. I think Luka would easily been able to be a better pairing with McCollum. And Damian Lillard would struggle with Dallas Mavericks. And people like to bring up the argument that Dame is the most clutch player in the league. Well, I agree with that, but you can't discredit Luka because Luka has hit some of the biggest daggers I've ever seen in the playoffs. He has sent Kawhi Leonard and Paul George home multiple times within the series. Yes, he lost them, but it's because of injuries and poor playing from his supporting cast. If you don't have a good supporting cast, there's excuses you can back it up. Damian Lillard has one of the better supporting cast for one of the superstars in the NBA. Luka Doncic can't say that about himself. So that's why what Luka is doing is a lot more impressive than Damian Lillard because he does not have a supporting cast. Yet he still gets his teammates involved and is the better passer as he gets his teammates involved with the assists.
Yes, but having another helper like McCollum helps Damian Lillard become a better basketball player. And he feeds off McCollum for more points. He feeds him off for more fouls, driving to the hole. Having a second guy helps you with more of that. Why is Lillard have better free throw percentage because he's shooting a lot more, and it's because he has help from McCollum. Fortunately, Luka doesn't have that. He's only doing it all by himself. And although you can double team him and he still will make a shot over you, he just doesn't have that give and go opportunity or an option that you can get for assists or someone can take a little bit. And if not playing every minute, which is normal for an NBA, the Ducks are don't have him on the court. At least with the Trailblazers, if Lillard's not on the court, they still have CJ McCollum to help fill that role for that few minutes until Lillard gets back on.
Well, that's kind of like countering what you were saying because Luka, without the supporting cast, still finds a way to be the better passer and create more for his team. I mean, yes, the stats show it, but I mean, if you watch the games, Luka is a pass first player. Dame is a score first player. Yet Luka is still able to dominate by scoring. He somehow finds the open man. That's why I call him Luka Magic. He finds the open man, magically sees them at the back, his eyes in the back of his head almost, and he puts up more assists with a worse supporting cast. His best players on the supporting cast were Kristaps Porzingis, who, as we know, a horrible disappointment in the playoffs. Tim Hardaway, he was good, but he's not a second option. Josh Richardson was fine last year. Jalen Brunson, Trey Burke, Maxi Kleber, Willie Cauley-Stein, they're fine players, but they don't compare to a supporting cast that the Trailblazers have. And the fact that Luka can perform better than Damian Lillard in the big moments, well, some of the time because Dame is the most clutch player in the league, but the fact that Luka can perform better than Dame without that supporting cast and still dominate and take his team further. Because remember, the Mavs forced Game 7 against the Clippers, and the Trailblazers, they didn't even make it to Game 7 against an injured Denver Nuggets team. They didn't have Jamal Murray or Will Barton, yet they still lost in 6. And I think Luka would have easily taken down that Nuggets team.
All right, that's gonna wrap up our first debate. If you're Team Dame time or Luka Magic time, or Team Luka Magic, put your thoughts in the comments. Debate with your friends. What side do you believe on, and who is really the better point guard, Luka or Lillard?
Welcome back to another segment of the show. We're still doing our PTI in your face topics. We're moving over to the NFL for another topic. This one is, I think, a really controversial one that I love talking about, and I can totally debate either side of this argument. And it is, who should the Patriots have as their starting quarterback for Week 1? Will it be Cam Newton or Mac Jones? Well, not just who it will be, who do we think it should be? And I'm going to go jump into my argument. I think it should be Cam Newton. And while I love Mac Jones, I think Mac Jones is the future of this franchise and will be the star in New England. He'll carry on Brady's legacy if he needs to. I think he can bring Super Bowls to New England, bring them back to a championship city or championship area in the U.S. I think Cam Newton's the safer play right now at the quarterback position because he's the veteran experience. He's a former MVP. Yes, he is not that former self, but he knows the game. He's going to be more useful in a lot of schemes this year because the NFL is becoming a little bit more dependent on the quarterback running the ball. Cam Newton was one of the first guys to really introduce that. Before like Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, there was no one else, and then Cam Newton came along, and he's influencing guys like Lamar and Kyler Murray who just take off. And Cam Newton, we've seen him in training camp. He's looked a lot better in the last few weeks in the preseason. I'll say in week 2, 8 for 9 on great accuracy. And he had a 151.4 QBR, which is close to perfect. He only played 1 quarter, and I think if he played more, he would have been fantastic. And we also have those excuses from last year that slowed him down, like COVID, not having a full off season to get with the system and meet the team, meet the coaches. And he didn't have a receiving core. But this year, there aren't any excuses. He already looks really good with some of the guys that are starting getting benched. So I think Cam Newton is the guy you want to go Week 1. Yet Mac Jones is still the future of the team.
So as much as I want to say Cam Newton as a veteran should start, I really think Mac Jones deserves the Week 1 start. And I'll tell you why. First off, Cam Newton, ever since he won MVP in 2016, which has been 5 years since, he has not been the same. Next year he faded. The following year he was injured. or the next 2 years he was injured. Last year he had COVID, and what do we expect from this year? Not much, just the same, same as usual since he's won MVP. On top of that, Mac Jones, the reason why the New England Patriots drafted him because of his decision making. And this week in practice, with Cam Newton sidelined due to a COVID mishap, which was not Cam's fault, according to Bill Belichick, Mac Jones got QB1 reps, and he had an awesome practice the other day because of his decision making and his throws to great wide receivers. Yes, the wide receivers are still not awesome in New England, with Aguilar and Bourne being a better option. But after that, you got Myers, and it kind of drops off from there. On the other hand, tight ends are going to be big, and Mac Jones is going to favor from that. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are two big tight ends, and Mac Jones has the ability to throw to those big guys. One big thing we saw from Cam last year was his decision time and how long it took for him to get rid of the football. If he continues like he throws like he did last year, he isn't getting these passes quick enough. He's not going to be the starter. And even if he is the week one starter, he ain't going to be the starter for very long. If he plays like he did against the Eagles in the preseason game last week, he is going to be the week one starter.
Okay, so I like the argument for Mac Jones, and I'd like to think that Mac Jones can be the QB1 for week one, and I think he can be. But the thing is, Mac Jones needs that time to wait and learn from the veteran. And I think at one point this year, they might hand it over to Mac Jones, see what we can do. I think he is NFL ready, and I think if they do start him, I'm not mad at that. I mean, yes, I might be a little biased because Cam Newton's one of my favorite players ever. I've always loved him, like even since he was drafted #1 overall back in 2011 with the Panthers.
I just want to
Cam
clarify,
Newton
you
is one of
will
my
be
favorite players.
upset. You will be upset if Max starts because you think Cam Newton is
I'm not
much,
upset.
much better than him. And
I don't
that,
think Cam Newton's much better than them. I won't be upset because I'm so excited to see what Mac Jones has got, and I think he's the future of the team. Like I said, he's a guy who can bring us to the Super Bowl. I don't think Cam Newton can ever do that for the Patriots. Um,
well, if you think that Mac Jones is really the better QB, then
he's
why do
not
you
the
keep
better QB right
saying
now. He
that
will be
Cam
soon.
Newton deserves to start? Yes,
He's
he's
not the
the
better QB.
veteran,
You can't
but
rate
Mac
rookies right
Jones is the
now.
better QB.
You can't rate rookies because Mac Jones is in a completely different situation. He doesn't have the receivers who he had at Alabama, as you remember. As you remember last year, he had Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle as his two big targets. He had Najee Harris to rely on. And in the NFL, do you really have those like super teams? Not really. So I think Mac Jones needs to adjust. He needs to acknowledge that this isn't the best team in the nation right now. And I think that right now you got to just give it to the veteran just maybe for the first few weeks. I think Cam Newton should get the start week one, but I would not be against Mac Jones getting a lot of starts this season because I do think Mac Jones is a QB of the future and could be one of the greatest Patriot players of all time when it's all said and done because I think he is the guy who can lead us to the Super Bowl. But right now, I just don't think I'd give him the week one start just because he's a little too young. I want to see him just watch from the sideline for the first few games, and when they think the time is right, they put Mac Jones in. I'm totally fine with that. But I think Cam Newton is the safe pick right now. It looks really good. And it also increases stock for next year's free agency because I hope Cam Newton can get a job elsewhere. I just don't think the fit is right in New England, but starting week one.
I know Mac Jones is a rookie and he played for a great organization last year in college at Alabama, and he doesn't have the same wide receivers here in New England. But I would actually disagree with you and have to argue that New England was always considered a super team with Tom Brady. And according to reports when they drafted Mac Jones is the next Tom Brady. He isn't going to be GOAT. I don't think he's going to win 6 Super Bowls in 20 years, but he's going to be the next franchise and bring this New England Patriots team back to the super team it was with Tom Brady, and that's something that Cam cannot do. Uh, yes, and with that, I think that'll wrap up our debate for our QB starter in New England, and we're going to end this episode with some sports headlines. So Today, the biggest news was in European soccer. We talk about MLS a lot, but we'll talk about European. Cristiano Ronaldo has agreed to a sensational return to Manchester United, the club announced today, in a 15 million euro deal with potential $8 million euros in add-ons. So a lot of money dealt with that, and Ronaldo goes back to Man City for a second stint. This has been the second biggest news in European soccer this summer, with Ronaldo going to PSG, Messi going to PSG, joining Neymar and Mbappe from France. U.S. Soccer World Cup qualifier starts next Thursday, September 2nd, with a game at El Salvador at 10 p.m. The big game, home against Canada on September 5th at 8 p.m. That game will be played in Nashville. And the last game in September will be at Honduras, September 8th at 10 p.m. A lot of big names. The biggest in goalies was Matt Turner, made it, and the other two goalies, Zach Steffen and forgetting the last name, but Matt Turner is the best, in my opinion, is the best MLS goalie. And a lot of people debate that Andre Blake is good, but I think Matt Turner is the best because of his shot stopping ability. And we saw that this past week in the All-Star game. He was unfortunately didn't get picked by the fans, which is really disappointing. But Bob Bradley knows what he's seen from coaching the U.S. men's national team, and he picked Matt Turner. Unfortunately, Matt Turner didn't start and came in towards the end of the game, but game went to PKs. And he saved two, including saving two penalties, and he saved in his last 7 games with the U.S. and the Revolution. He has barely let up any goals. I think the number is like 2 or something. And he's had so many shutouts in that. And that's why I would have to argue with him being the best shot stopper, best goalie in MLS. So the U.S. play El Salvador September 2nd, Canada September 5th, and Honduras September 8th. In MLB, last weekend we had Tigers' Miguel Cabrera becoming the 20th player in baseball history to reach 500 home runs. We had probably one of the longest games in baseball, the Dodgers and Padres going 16 innings in nearly 6 hours. So a lot of big, interesting things. But we wrap up something new that we're trying to do. It's called the word of the episode. And today's word is immaculate. And a lot of people may not know what that word is. And it's a baseball term for when someone has an immaculate inning. An immaculate inning is when a pitcher strikes out a 3 batters in an inning with minimum pitches, which is 9, doesn't get a fly out, doesn't get a doesn't get a ground out or anything. It has to be 3 strikes and only 9 pitches. And in this case, this happened last night with the Boston Red Sox. Chris Sale threw an immaculate inning, and this is his 3rd time in his career, tying only the great Sandy Koufax, who in fact is Jewish, in case you didn't know that. But that's a word of the episode. It's immaculate. It happens in baseball. Jason, you want to wrap up the episode?
Yeah. So that's gonna do it. A lot of news, lots of discussions, and we're hoping to keep this theme of debating in a lot of future episodes. It's not gonna be like a lot of like news based. It's gonna be a little bit more debating. I mean, yes, we'll update with the biggest news in sports, and also that kind of leads into where you can see us updating you guys on the latest news in sports. We're expanding our social media platforms to a lot of places. So we're gonna start off with Twitter at the CBJ Show. We should be tweeting a few times a day about some of the biggest news. So recommend following if you want to be updated and see our opinions. That is something that we hope to be really active on. TikTok. I am running a TikTok page for the CBJ Show. So if you haven't followed it yet, go follow at the CBJ Show. I'm doing a lot of like sports recaps for every single day. So you can hear about every single day in sports. There might be a few a day. I'm going to post one for later today, shortly on the 27th of August. So go follow over there. We got a lot of great content. And of course, Instagram we've had for a while, cbj.sports. If you haven't followed there, go follow there. We're posting on the story, and we might try to like change the content that's gonna be posted. So make sure you look at that. We also have an email if you want to
Thing,
connect with us. The CBJ
uh,
show.
one thing, and that you've heard this episode, so we're gonna start adding clips of the debates onto Instagram, so you can get short videos, not have to listen to a 35-minute podcast if you don't have time. So you can still listen to about a 5-10 minute video and still have some sports fun.
Yeah. And like I said, the email here is the cbjshow@gmail.com. If you'd like to contact us, go for that. Yeah, we'll be sure to respond to those if you want to. And also, we're changing up the YouTube. It's not going to be on Brandon or my channel. We have a new channel called the CBJ Show. Just search up the CBJ Show, and you will find our YouTube channel. We haven't posted there yet, but we will have it posted soon. We'll have all the episodes they've recorded in the past, and this one hopefully up there shortly. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go do so. Hopefully we can hit 20 subscribers by the end of the week. That would be great. We already have about like 15, which we are really happy about. And we're probably gonna add like a link tree to a lot of the bios of all our new sites. So if you have trouble finding anything, it should be there. And you'll be able to follow us everywhere.
All right, episode 30 is in the books. Hopefully Kim will be able to join us back for our next episode. We can get the whole gang back together. But with that, for Jason and I'm Brandon, that's going to do it for CBJ episode 30. Thanks for watching.